Hello, everybody. Good morning and namaste. Namaste to everyone. So, how are you feeling? All good? All healthy? Okay. So, first of all, I want to start by thanking to the organizers. Last year, I was in that chair thinking about I will be participating and I will be in this stage next year. And I am here. And also a big applause for the organizers for organizing this wonderful event. And so, let's dive into it. Can we have a slide? So, in your workspace, how many of you have a guy with a title DevOps? Please raise your hand. Around 30%. Yeah, that's also cool. So, let's start. So, in this talk, there is a this is a big topic, and it's hard to cover everything in this talk in this span of time. And bear with me, I will not talk mostly about the tools or one of the most best practices, so you can get your software development or you can get your software application never failing, and you could not make mistakes. Let's not expect that. And after leaving this room, I hope you will get the most of it, and you will also not be in the same stage like people are saying like DevOps is creating the server. Last few days ago, I was talking with a person, and when I asked what do you think about DevOps, and he said like it's creating a server, right? So I hope you won't be in that position after leaving this room or after this presentation. So bear with me. And it's all about solving the business problem rather than only the devs and ops war and only the development flow, but getting the business value from the base of us, what we can do. Yeah. We all have been facing, or we might have faced at some point of time, right? Because the business person is getting needs have the requirement going on, and there is a time where developers writes the code, and there is time for the deployment in production, and there starts a war between the developers and operations, like it's in my machine, it's your fault. And how many of you are familiar with containers? Raise your hand. Oh, good one of you. So you might be thinking that the train has said it's raw, it's not my code, it's your container. The train has shift, right? Yeah, that happens. So let's dig into that problem also. And yes, I'm Raju Dawadi. I'm a DevOps from PageBamp. I've been working for PageBamp since 2 years, and I've also been as a consultant for few projects, including one in Mexico. It's a startup project, and also FMCG company, and also a few of the blockchain projects. And I've also been building a DevOps community here in Kathmandu, if you have heard about it. And we'll also dig out it later. And first of all, I'm primarily a developer who has a bit of understanding operations and also understand the rage or the rare face of the business person when a customer asks like my website is or my software is not getting updated since 1 hour and refund me. So combining all of that, let's dive into it. So in this talk, we'll start with how the movement started, how the DevOps term or how the DevOps evolution started, and we'll debunk with the few of the DevOps myths we mostly hear about, and we'll dive into what steps of transformation which gets us there. And I will also share about the story of our company, PageBamp, and how we transformed and how we have been learning and also shifting and developing a more resilience product. And also, we'll talk about how we can measure the transformation, because without the metrics, we cannot say what we have done. And then I will also share some wise rules for the adoption, and we'll reach there. So how it all started. So there was one conference in 2009 by O'Reilly conference, and there was an interesting talk by few of the two Flickr developers. And they are very interesting. I suggest you to go there, just search Flickr with O'Reilly conference, and you will get there. And they had a huge problem with the devs and ops war. Like that affected their product, and they could not get released into production at time, and they were very outraged. So they started building a combined team or the cross-functional team with engaging both of the developers and the operations, and their product became more faster. They could be more proactive. So that's where the movement started. And after that, in 2009 in Belgium, there was a DevOps conference, and then thereafter in 2010, there was a conference in US, California about the DevOps, inspired by the same talk from the Flickr developers in the O'Reilly conference. So it was all about, in the earlier days, it was all about breaking down the silos between developers and the operations. But the trend has changed now. Like, how can you get the most out of the business value from it, and by engaging more of the flow, not only the ops work, not only to the release to production, but from the planning to the release phase and all of the structure of engaging whole of the team and with the sharing and collaboration. So he's one of the popular guy. How many of you have heard about him? Because he's a very popular guy, and it's interesting to know that there is one of the novel relating with the DevOps, not only the how can you do that, and taking his word, like it's all of the collaboration between the team and how can you get our product more reliable and also resilient, secure, and with the more stability. So let's debunk some of the myths. One of the important myths is, like I already said, DevOps is creating the server. But let's dig into more. Use of fancy tools. Yeah, we all like to be fancy. We all like to use fancy tools. Like if any of the bigger companies like Google or Amazon or Facebook is using or trying some of their tools for their, and if they open source it, then we are already fantastic, like they are solving that problem with that tools, and if you can use that tools, then we could reach like hundreds of thousands of users, we could get our product more faster, and we are already fantastic. But trust with me, even with the most of these tools, there are hundreds or hundreds of tools. By using all of these tools, at any cost, if you don't have a proper culture, if you don't have a proper system, and if you cannot get the engagement with all of the parties in the development, then you might not reach there. So tools is one of the important things, but let's not consider tools is the only thing there. And yes, how many of you know what a public and private cloud? Public and private cloud? Oh, very few. Wake up, guys. Like it's like just public and private vehicle, right? In the public bus, we can just travel there, we can enter the bus, and we can reach the destination and just pay for it. Anybody can get into the bus, and in private car, you have to ask for it. They own their vehicle. It's just like in public cloud, you ask for something, you pay for it, you get all of the services, and just leave there. And you can get all of it unless you are paying for the last month or just only the payment matters. And in private cloud, you own the service, or you own the infrastructure. So there is the myth that we can apply only DevOps only in public cloud because there are all of the services provided by them, like the security, the scalability, the agility they provide, but it's not there. And also, it's not only for the web companies. Like we see lots of talks only, like only web companies can do that. Only web companies are there, but there are lots of scope for it. Like even the airlines companies or the aircraft companies or government agencies, AI, ML, blockchain, whatnot. So it's not over there. And there was I think 1 month ago, there was a talk in HashiConf, and the woman in Linux, we call her Bat, and she's mostly popular. And she shared her experience by like building a resilient infrastructure in a completely air-gapped environment without any internet access. So think of that by using the DevOps tool we have heard about it in a completely air-gapped environment and building, and that means in the public cloud. So it's not only for the public cloud. Yes, continuous deployment. When we talk about DevOps, we all, how many of you have, like, there is continuous development in my workspace? How many of you think that? Okay, so keep on raising your hand, and please keep your hand down if you think like you are deploying, if there is any commit or merging to the master or the main branch, if you push it to production at least once a day, keep raising your hand or hands down. So very few of you. I think there is more to go. Yeah, DevOps is building a service, not only the continuous deployment or the continuous delivery. Like, it's about building the whole service, not only the shipping. Because if there is problem in building, then what does it matter to ship faster and whatnot? Because we cannot get feedback from the customer, we cannot get feedback from the client, we cannot test our product, and there is no way. So deployment is one of the tools. Deployment is one of the thing. It's important thing, but it's not the only thing. And yeah, if you there are around 30% of you raised our hand with the title DevOps, and if those who haven't raised their hand, they must be thinking, or they might have a thing like, if we have a DevOps in our company, then we can do all of the thing. We don't need this operations thing and stuff like that. So it's not that there. Because having only the DevOps or having only the DevOps person in your office doesn't mean that you have acquired there, or you have a very good practice to be there. So you might need some guidance over there, but it's not only there. And without the proper collaboration, without the proper system, without the proper responsibility sharing, you cannot reach there. And yeah. We all are hungry for access. Like we want more access than we need to. Because if we cannot give access, we think like, यो access लिएर मैले भात खाने हो र भन्ने हुन्छ नि, हैन? सबभन्दा धेरै access चाहिन्छ हामीलाई. So let me share you a story of our company PageRamp. Like it was 3 years ago. Everybody has the access to production database, and someone changed the structure of a column, and we are still facing the problem, and we still have some codes over there to overcome that, and we don't know who did that, right? So we might need give to access, but we should be very careful, and also we should have a proper logging system, or we can give only access for a certain time. So let's not consider that if we have a DevOps, then we can do everything in production, because we believe that if we have a DevOps culture or the DevOps platform, then we can build fast, fix fast. If the customer is complaining, we can see his or her database, and we can do more fixes quickly. We can get more product more resilient faster. So it's not that. So yeah, there are lots of myths, but let's leave it there and let's start for the transformation. So leaving the myth, it's like back in the days when I started there with the DevOps, like after a few years of development, I used to think like with seeing most of the tools, is this DevOps storm started by a few of the people who are not good at developers, not good at operation, and make their own way with the crazy tools, and by confusing all of them and whatnot, because we have seen like I used to see like, what is the salary for the DevOps, and I saw in Stack Overflow it comes on third for the worldwide as well as US. So it must be crazy, but it's not there. It's real, and it's about all of the steps from solving the problem, from the planning, coding, and to the release and operations and monitoring. All of that. So let's start with the few steps of transformation, and I'll also share the story of PageRamp, our company, how we started with the transformation and how we reached there and how we still are learning there. So it's a long process. You cannot achieve transformation in just a click. There is a long process, and it's a very ongoing process. You cannot build your infrastructure, you cannot build your whole process at once and just leave there. It's a very long process. So usually when I read few of the blogs for the bigger and middle-sized company, it takes 2 or 3 years at least to give it structure, but the learning is always ongoing. Yeah. How many of you have seen this hierarchy of competence? Anyone? A few of you? Mm-hmm. So at first, the bottom one, the unconscious incompetence, we always have a wrong intuition as first. we don't know what we can achieve, we don't know what we can reach there, what is up there in the sky. So we start from there, and we gradually start learning and building things, and we have a wrong analysis, but we have conscious that we can reach there, we can build our product there. That's a wrong analysis. And right analysis, or the conscious competence, we are like doing there, we are collaborating, we are fixing things, we are building product more better. And at that time, we might get wrong and we might make mistakes, and we always keep on improving. And in the last phase, there is right intuition, because unknowingly you are doing the best thing, or you are giving the best you can do, and you are building a product more better. So in the first step, know your caliber, because we are humans, we need learnings. So first you have to figure out how my team is, what is the caliber of my team, what is the mileage. So in that context, you might need help from others, or you might need to get a good or a experienced guy over there. So start with the caliber, recognizing the caliber. And in the planning phase, don't just plan by involving only the developers and the operations, because we are think like we are solving the business problem. Think from that perspective, because it's not only the development or the operations or the front end or the system kind of work, because the whole part is getting the business. And so in that context, identify the long and the quick wins, because that's always the starting phase, right? We have to figure out the quick wins. Like if there is a short-term problem, if there is a long waiting for certain things, then just finish it or just solve this problem and get further and get to the next level. So that's the obvious structure. And build a foundation. So in this foundation, you should be building a process where you could deploy your code to the production more quickly as possible. So that starts the feeling of to the developers or the operations or anything or anyone that I now have the courage to build it and ship it and get the more feedback from the customers easily. So, and also like start building the system where the monitoring and the alerting pipelines are set by the developers or the team, not by only the DevOps guy. So how many of you have a alerting system set by someone who doesn't know? How you don't give a damn about how the alerting or how the logging pipeline is set? How many of you? One, next. So let's not only focus, or let's not give only the right to the DevOps guy or someone, but you know better about what type of code you are writing, where it might fail, and all of that. So think of that from the team perspective. And standardization, yeah. With the evolution of containers, I started for that, right? But I won't talk only about the tools, but we are using different types of OS. Some might be using Windows or Mac or Linux, and ultimately in the server we mostly have Linux environment, right? So unless we standardize the build environment, the problem with it runs in my machine, it's your problem, always arise there. So build some system or the standard system, so there is a parity between from the developer machine to the operations machine. That's where the container system arises. That might help you, or that might not help you, or there should be other way. But in case of our story at PageMap, we started with the Docker. There were lots of problems in the beginning. Like there was a versioning problem. There were lots of problems, and there was a error like it works in my container. It's not my core problem or something like that. But after we get started and after we get more collaborative, then we started there. And by using Kubernetes, we standardize the whole environment from the development to the production flow, right? So the same Docker or the same container we use in our development machine, that the same container was running in the production. So if there is any kind of changes, any kind of packages you want to add, so you can add in your Docker file or the container image file, and that just run into production. So you don't have to ping anyone to, like, I have updated in this package, please update this. I have dependency in there, please update this. So this removes all of the communication gap in there. And version control, yeah. We might all be using Git for that. And also for the configuration environment. Not only for the code or not only for the application, but also the environment where your code is running, where your system is running, and also you need to version control on that, and integrate the code review system. I want to ask you, how many of you your code get merged into the main branch after the code review or someone reviews your code? Oh, that's very nice. That's very nice, very nice. So I don't have to say more about that. For those who didn't raise your hand, that should be, you might be only one in the team or only one-man army, unless you get your code review by one of the guys, because we might make mistakes, and we need to get suggestions from others also. And start with the CI and the testing. Yeah, I already said the continuous integration and the deployment pipeline, because it gives us, we can realize where we are making mistakes, where our tests are failing more quicker, and we can do fixes more earlier before reaching to the client machine or before our client browses our software. Yeah, this is very simple, right? We just started integrating code climate, and it just run our production when you create a pull request, and if there is any kind of test failing, then we can fix our code and getting there. Yeah. We all have been facing this. All say we are with you, we are with you, and the pressure is ongoing, and all of the pressure that comes in is the developer or the operations people. And yeah. This is more of tools problem, also the cultural problem. Because without the psychological safety, we should be allowed to make mistakes. Like, we are human, we should be allowed to make mistakes, but fix it more quicker. That should be the intuition. And without the psychological safety, if I am not allowed to make mistakes, and if there is any, we make mistakes and someone says, you did it, then we train not to, we get into stable, right? That's where the DevOps started, like I talked earlier, because the operations people always wanted to keep your code stable, so they restricted the changes, or they want less changes. So from where the term started, because operations people are made responsible for running into production, and when something happens, then the business people ask, like, operations people, why, what is the problem? And they tend to get more stability by blocking the pipelines or by getting the changes less frequently. So that should not be there. We should be allowed to make a mistake, and there should be the high trust norm. So we should be trusting each other that we all do what we can do and why we give all the best of us. And we should be appreciating what we are doing. That gives us more freedom, and that gives us more courage for us, and that gives us more learning opportunity and whatnot. And yeah, for the incident management, if we make mistake, if there is any kind of a problem, then there should not be the condition like, if you did this and this happened, or this much of our customers happened, this much of our revenue got ruined, but it's the whole system or the whole, you need to optimize. So start with the blameless culture in there. Yeah. Those were the days, like we'll see server infrastructure, or the infrastructure only as a few server, like we get Ubuntu or something machine and we just leave it there, but the change has changed, like, right? Because there are lots of cloud companies offering lots of their services, including the security, the IAM roles, and all the BPCs. So we should be treating our infrastructure as a service, not only as a server. So just like you write your application, you version control it, you do code review, you should also be doing the same for your infrastructure. For every kind of infrastructure you build, if you write into code, that might sound awkward. Awkward, anyone? Because we are talking about writing our infrastructure in code, right? We don't click, and then we create a Ubuntu server, and someone doesn't know what anyone is doing. If there is any kind of change, one doesn't know what change is going there and what affected our flow. So we should be treating infrastructure as a service and start writing that as a code. And yes, automate the hands-off work. We all know that because that prevents a lot of communication gaps and all of that. And we should be focusing on the resilience also, because nothing is 100% reliable, so everything fails at a time, but we should be prepared for that. And I already talked about in that database kit, the rollback access control. We should be giving access to anyone only what they need, because less access is the enough access for us. And minimize the technical debt slowly. We should be minimizing it, but in the name of the minimizing technical debt, this might happen if you don't have a good process. There is a night capital name, so there is a financial company which is related with the stock. And in the name of the technical debt, they somehow forgot to, or whatever happened, they had their old code running in production, and somehow the new code pinged the old code while releasing a new software, and it just in 15 minutes of time, it randomly bought most of the stocks, and it lost 440 million in 15 minutes, and it has to be bought by any other company. So that might happen in the. And some might say like it's a test failure, there are no tests running in there might be developers failure, but it was the process failure in there. And build a self-service. So apart from pinging someone or for reducing the communication gap, you should be building the self-service system, so anybody who could build a system, just delete it and then work on their own. And you should be focusing more on visibility also. So you could track the changes or how we are improving. And grow beyond uptime. We are in the modern century. We cannot trust only on the uptime environment, because uptime is very less. Because if any of our customer is, like in a general scenario, if any of our customer cannot log into our system, what does the uptime make sense? Does that make sense? It might make sense only for 50% of the users. So grow beyond uptime, make it more reliable, and also run some tests over time, and gets the most out of the logging and the monitoring solutions. And always experiment and apply gradually. Don't just switch the whole system at once. So we started with the steps of our transformation. Let's dive into how we can measure the performance, because without measuring, without the tracking, we cannot determine how far we have gone, how we have optimized. So these are the most of the metrics, like lead time, the change fail, and deployment frequency, and time to restore. Let's dive into them shortly. Sorry. So lead time. So it starts from the starting of our development phase to the code release to the production. This determines the whole of our structure. Like let's consider a scenario. We have to do a quick fix in 1 hour and think about it. Like we have to discuss with the business people, we have to write code, we have to run tests, we have to make some changes, and then we have to run into production. So if there is only a 1 hour of time, so you can just track in this manner, like what time or what process is taking most of the time. So this creates, and with the bigger lead time, it always adds the complexity, right? So track the changes and track the processes or how much time it is taking, and then just start measuring this metric. And the deployment frequency, like when we were using Windows, actually we used to get updates like in 5 years, right? But in this scenario with the Windows 10 or Windows 9, we are getting more frequent updates. That if our internet is slower, we have to check if our update is on auto upgrade or not before complaining for the ISP. And by that way, maybe Windows is getting more feedback from the customer. They know more features, or they know more fixes, so they can deploy more changes, or they can send deployment changes more earlier. So we are getting a better experience, I think, for Windows, because I've been using Windows since many years. So with more deployment frequency, we believe that if we are getting code more deployed more frequency, then we might have like more changes there, and we may not be track the changes, and we might get more errors. But there are other processes for releasing more frequently, because you don't have to release all of the changes at once. You can select the users according to their demographics, certain percentage of the user, or the certain age group, or whatever. only for the specific user, and you can track all of the error rates and how the application is performing, and you can then easily roll out to the bigger users base. Yeah. And also for the deployment frequency, we started using chatbot apart from the automated deployment. And with this simple chatbot, we achieve the 10x of the deployment, and it's very easier for the developers to check their code more frequently without merging into the main branch, or the QA can test code by just deploying from the Slack bot. So it has been very easier for us. And yeah, everything fails over time. Nothing is 100% reliable, but we should be optimistic for our system. But we should also plan for the pessimism, because there might be disaster from our application perspective or from the cloud or some server perspective. So we should be concerned in that, and we should have a backup plan so that we can restore our service more easily or in a less span of time by affecting more of our users by losing less data. And the failure rate, yeah. This might happen, but we have to be concerned like how we can release the failure rate, right? Because if there is more of the failure rate, we cannot be more proactive. We cannot we cannot add more features. We may be fixing bugs more frequently. So there should be a process like the code review or the CI test, the continuous integration testing. So with that, we can minimize the change failure. And few of the wise adoption rules, yeah. I will say, don't just focus on the tools, because you might be using the fancy tools. Just for an example, if you are using like some cloud providers, DevOps tool like Azure DevOps, you might not be reaching there, because only tools is not only the solution. And just don't treat infrastructure only as a server, but as a service, just like utility or application. By that way, you can be more you can do any of the changes. And if there is a peer review for the infrastructure, what would it be? Any of you have been doing peer review for infrastructure changes? Oh, 3, 5, 6, around 10. Yeah, that's very good, right? And just focus on to be declarative, like just not following every steps over time, but build a system where you could be more declarative, and so by that way we could avoid failure at some time and adopt iteratively. And always focus on specialization, because we might need the team, we might need the whole people involved in the development or the whole business flow. So with the specialization, we can achieve there. And never give up and be satisfied. Always keep learning. And if you fail in some part, the idea might not be wrong, but the system there might be the problem in system. So think of that way and be more experimental and keep on thinking more and keep on building and keep on improving. And by building a cross-functional team of the developers, operations, and by giving more engagement, you can reach there. And yes, Sarjora also knows about it. Like normal people only think about we are running fine, we are satisfied, but we are not common people. Like common people don't come to WWKTM. We are always exceptional, right? So there are lots of the problem domain, there are lots of changes happening, there are lots of data, there is lots of processing power. So you should always be prepared and keep on learning. And by that way, you can always be forward. So it's all about, not about the tools, process, or the organization structure, it's about the culture and architecture. So apart from that, let's talk a bit about the community. We have been building a DevOps community in Kathmandu. So we started since late 2018, and we have few meetups and a few discussion sessions and meetings over there. I think we had 6 meetups over there. So if you want to join, because the major concern for building this community was to get the like-minded people. There should be a platform, and we could bridge the gap between the local community and global communities, because with all of these tools, all of these cultures, that's mostly talked in the global community, and we see only in the YouTube, but we want to bridge the gap. So we also had international speaker online, offline. We also had like few meetings online, so we could bridge the gap. And we started from here in late 2018 to this in mid of 2019. So thank you all for being an awesome listener.